Hey, y'all. Thank you for tuning in to today's show. I just want to let you know that our episode today is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. If you have not caught up on all the latest craze and you want to download the app, do so now when you use underdogfantasy.com/dominate. That's promo code dominate to match your deposit up to $100, dollar for dollar. All the great best ball action and the easiest to use player prop betting app that you could possibly have on the market. Again, go to Underdog Fantasy and just use the promo code dominate when you sign up today to get a match dollar for dollar up to $100 on your deposit. Thank you for supporting the show.
Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan Mader.
Last but not least, on Sunday night.
Thornton.
Yeah, I mean, I got him.
Chris Dowhouse.
Get him, Chase. Get him, Chase.
And Adam LaRue.
No, not necessarily, but it's again. It's the same.
Don't hope to win. Be great and dominate.
All right. Did you miss us? It's only been a week, but we're back here with continuing on our Dynasty Rookie Series with the running backs today. Thank you for tuning in to Operation Domination. Thank you for subscribing to our YouTube channel. Oh, by the way, if you haven't done so, that means you should hit the bell notification to get notified whenever we have new content available to you. And Operation Domination is widely available on every single one of your podcast platforms now: Apple, Spotify, iHeart, wherever you'd like to listen on the go. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mader. I'm joined here with the crew. We got Adam LaRue, Chris D, and Chase Thornton in the building. How we doing, fellas?
Let's do it. Let's talk about the most exciting. Take that with a grain of salt. The most exciting. Let's talk about the most exciting group here coming up in the draft. Everybody's really excited about the running backs. We're all ready to rip roaring to tear into these guys because it's such a well-renowned class. So let's get it going.
I think you meant next week when we talk about the wide receivers.
Yeah, well,
the most exciting. It's okay.
Listen, I can get excited early.
It's just a little FYI. We'll be
We're
back
all
next week
exciting.
talking wide receivers. Absolutely. Adam, how we doing, man?
Doing good.
Good. Chris D, everything good back there?
Well, between this draft class that I'm not nearly as excited about, and the draft news going down, I am wanting to invest in some Joe Mixon stock today. I'll tell you that, Dan.
How about Houston Texans galore? We're going to get all into that because, yeah, it was big news. We are going to talk about Stephon Diggs in just a second. But first, we got to properly introduce our guest who took the time out today. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. He's the featured analyst and host of the Dynasty podcast on FTN. The one, the only, Mr. Jeremy Bubblers.
Ow!
What's up, buddy?
You know, that's the best intro I've ever had. So I feel like I may not live up to that hype. I'm going to have to try, you know. But I'm doing well. I'm traveling, as you could see, not the normal background. So, you know, I'm just living the life in a hotel, getting to talk to you guys about some, you know, we got the sarcasm from Chase, but you know that less than ideal running back class, but it's still a fun class. It's fun to dissect, and with this many people and talking some rankings and stuff like that, there's a lot of different opinions. It's fun to bounce some of that stuff off. So I'm excited.
The one really cool thing about a class like this, where there's not necessarily a unanimous top 1, 2, 3, whatever the case may be, is that there's a lot of debate as far as who likes who more. And you can really kind of get in the minutia of how people process during their scouting reports and how they rank their players as such, if everything is wide the hell open. So it's going to make for an interesting conversation today. We got top 10 running backs that we're going to talk about. ECR, I should say, not necessarily our top 10 running backs. We'll get into that. A lot of debates going on. But first things first, the Buffalo Bills are losing their friggin' minds today. Stephon Diggs gets traded. Not only did Stephon Diggs get traded, the Buffalo Bills also gave up a 2025 sixth rounder and this year's fifth rounder for Houston Texans next year's 2025 second round pick. Now, and also take the cap hit to go along with it. So everyone's going to chime in on this in a second. But first of all, besides it just being the most insane thing I've seen of the Bills just giving away pretty much the entire farm all off season long, this is a great boost for CJ Stroud. Makes me giddy for him. He's going to have, 3 receivers that all finished in the top 20 in fantasy points per game last year. Wide receiver 6, 15, and 16. Now he's going to have Diggs, Collins, and Tank Dell. Don't forget about the extension they gave Dalton Schultz. Don't forget about the acquisition they made for Joe Mixon. There's going to be offense galore. So CJ Stroud, I might have had my doubts a little bit that he can maintain top 6, top 7, top 8 fantasy value going in the next season. Not anymore. He's got too many weapons to fail. So we love it for him. On the flip side, Dalton Kincaid, I don't know who else is going to catch the ball in Buffalo. But even if they get a rookie wide receiver, so what? He's still going to be a rookie wide receiver later on in the first round. Dalton Kincaid might be the number 1 target with a Josh Allen as a quarterback. So we love it for him too. But what I'm going to have to rack my brain about, this is what I'm going to be asking the panel. What about the target distribution? Stephon Diggs, now there's no way he's going to average the near 10 targets a game that he's been averaging since he became a Buffalo Bill with Nico Collins and Tank Dell and all those other names I put there on the field as well. So we have a wide variety of things that we had to get into real quick in this news before we get to our rookie running backs. So I want to start off with our guest, Jeremy. What was your take on that trade today?
I'm a little heartbroken. I'm a Bills fan. I'm from Buffalo, New York. I live there. Normally, you'd see about 15 Bills helmets in the background. So, yeah, as a football fan with the Bills, I understand it. There was something wrong in the second half of the season significantly with Stephon Diggs as far as whether that was an injury or effort or what direction you want to go with it. I was leaning injury, but obviously this trade kind of seems like it wasn't really the Bills' choice to do it. Kind of sounds like Stephon Diggs wanted out. From some of the quotes and stuff from Brandon Beane makes it kind of seem like they were tied. They had to do something. Do they get a lot of cap relief this year? No, but they do next year. So I really think that this was kind of, hey, I'm going to open up some cap for 2025. We're going to go ahead and get ourselves some draft capital to use in a different direction. Now, whether that's they trade up and try to go after one of the top receivers in this class, it's going to cost them a lot. Maybe they go that route. Maybe they also use that to trade for T. Higgins or Brandon Ayuk or one of those guys that's nearing a contract extension that they can kind of push that cap hit out to 2025. So I don't think it's the end all there for the Bills as far as who their receiver is going to be. As far as the Texans go, kind of like you said there, Dan, I think it's worse for all the receivers personally. I think it's good for CJ Stroud. He's going to get that other target. But none of those guys are going to see the target volume they have seen. All 3 are very good receivers. We have seen that. I think at worst, it probably hurts maybe Nico Collins. I guess it depends how they decide to use Stephon Diggs. Like, does Diggs take kind of what Tank Dell was doing? Or do they move Diggs to the perimeter and now Nico Collins loses what he was doing? So it's going to be interesting to see how that all folds out. But nice bump for CJ Stroud. I don't really think that the receivers are going to get that volume. I kind of hate it for all 3 of them, to be honest. But obviously the Bills, if they land a rookie receiver, becomes a very intriguing rookie receiver in this draft.
Yeah, we just got a question coming in here from Unbearable Sports Podcast and talking about, are they curious with the Bills trade up for Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors? And the problem with that is I don't have enough draft capital getting inside the top 10, and that's what they're going to need to get one of those guys. So you're probably not looking at a top tier receiver of that nature. And if you're going to wait for 2025 anyway, I don't think you're looking to give away the farm to move up that high either. Chase, what did you make of this, man? Let's look at it from this standpoint. Jeremy touched a little bit on which receiver does it hurt the most. Which receiver do you think would be the number 1 of the group?
Of the group, I think it should be Diggs. I really like Tank Dell. I like what Tank Dell was doing last season before he went down with the injury and had to miss some time. I think that they don't probably make this move to bring in Diggs unless they think that he is worthy of that kind of workload still, because why upset what they had? I mean, Nico Collins and Tank Dell were a pretty good 1-2 punch last year. They do bring in Joe Mixon. They've still got Dalton Shaw. I mean, they've got a stacked group right now at the skill positions. But I tend to agree with Jeremy. I think it seems to me like this probably hurts Collins the most of all of them. That's my knee-jerk reaction. Now we'll see how they end up using them going forward. But I think that Diggs is probably still their number one. I don't know that I like his value as much as I would have had he stayed with Buffalo, because like we just talked about, there's just so many people they can throw the ball to now. I think this is one of those, it almost becomes like one of those Packers situations that we used to have where it was like you knew that the Packer pass game was going to be good, but you never know who's going to be getting the ball at any given time.
Used to, Chase.
Used to, and now still kind of do, but you know what I'm saying. You never know from week to week who could be the number one. Each one of these guys could be great. I'll tell you what, this just raises their best ball profiles for me. They're guys that I would like to have in best ball, but I don't know that I'm going to want to have to pay the premium that I'm going to have to get, that I'm going to have to pay to get them in redraft at the moment.
Well, that's it. I have all these guys now as like at best case, you're a wide receiver 2, because on any given week, we're going to go through a carousel probably every single week where they're all going to take turns. Maybe 2 of them get there. Maybe you have enough efficiency because this offense could be crazy efficient, and maybe that could overcome some of the volume issues. I mean, Chris, what do you think about that?
That's what I lean towards. I mean, picture Stephon Diggs running Brandon Ayuk routes in that offense and CJ Stroud hitting them. I think Nico Collins does suffer the most. I think that'll be debatable how much that winds up being. I think where it shows you is Nico Collins is going to contract here. How much are we going to invest in him? And we want to keep that limited. Maybe we have to pay him receiver 1 money because he's not necessarily playing that receiver 1 role. But overall, I think the mouths can all be fed. I mean, we've seen similar systems such as in the Rams where 3 receivers can definitely thrive, especially when you have a good quarterback such as CJ Stroud. I mean, Jared Goff is feeding 3 mouths. Why can't CJ Stroud do the same? And I think you have an offense that had good pace last year. So I put all those things together. I have continuity on my offense. I think you just basically gave the Texans a chance to be a contending team moving forward, and maybe that Cincinnati Bengal team we've all been clamoring for to take the next step over the last couple of years that might be sitting in Houston right now.
Yeah, I like that comparison actually quite a bit, because it is what Cincinnati kind of tried to do a couple of years ago, and now we are watching Houston do something similar and maybe better because they're going to be a bit younger on top of it. Adam, as a Colts fan, how you feel? How you feeling over there?
Pretty bad. Not great at all. Don't feel great, especially as a Colts fan who kind of wants a receiver, and I feel like a second rounder really isn't that much. We have cap space, please, Ballard. But yeah, that's terrifying because I don't feel. I feel like CJ Stroud is in a very good position, and I don't want to make this statement lightly, but I think he's in a very good position to not only break but potentially shatter the single season passing yard record. And that scares me quite a bit. From the Carolina game onwards, he was already pacing around 4,900. Records 54-70, somewhere thereabouts. Like, that's not adding a Stephon Diggs, getting another offseason, getting a better pass blocker at running back. I don't like it at all.
Maybe not making Tank Dell block on the 1 yard line like a bunch of dum-dums and getting him hurt. All those things kind of factor in here. That can definitely be part of it.
I'm terrified, to be honest with you.
Oh, man. Yeah. So this is going to be fun to break down throughout the entire offseason, but we do got to get into what we came to do today, and that is to talk about this rookie running back class and get through as many of them as we can, because we got a lot of debates to talk about here. The first man up is going to be one Mr. Jonathan Brooks out of Texas. Unfortunately has the ACL injury, which is what I think makes this very interesting as far as where people are going to rank him. As of now, he is the ECR number 1 running back, and we have a showdown. In case you're new to the show or you weren't with us before when we were previously the MD's Fantasy Football Show, this is how the showdown is going to work. We got 2 people that do not agree, and they're going to debate it out, and we're going to have somebody, our guest Jeremy, is going to dictate who's going to win this particular debate. Jeremy will be in on other debates later on, don't worry, but this particular showdown is going to be between Adam, who has Jonathan Brooks ranked as his number one, so he is in line with the ECR, taking on Chris, who's the lowest of all of us, having Jonathan Brooks at number 5. So let's start with Chris. Chris, why do you have Jonathan Brooks so low?
Dan, just first to preface first, at running backs right now, it's a lot to do with fit, so this is going to be something we're definitely going to change. But for me, Jonathan Brooks is the guy who's injured and not playing, and therefore I don't know what his draft capital is going to be spent on him. There's a lot of talk about will he or not be ready for training camp week 1. If not, missing a whole offseason as a running back, that means you can't pass protect, which starts limiting what your value is. Once you kind of fall behind, depending on what that draft capital is, running back position, you can get quickly forgotten about a new regime change, a new situation, another signing. So I think this is a situation where, for me, it's more of a cost versus reward. I think Jonathan Brooks is a good player. I don't think he's anything super special that I had to think invest in number 1. And I think there's a lot of question marks whether his availability and what he's going to be after this injury.
So availability is the best ability, according to Chris. Adam, why is Jonathan Brooks your number 1?
Well, for starters, so my expectation is that he will be cleared for training camp. So I do think that we'll be good on those parts. I do think, and for me, one of his strengths is his acceleration. So with the injury, obviously, that's going to be hampered a little bit. But the kid's young, and the kid has less than 240 carries. He turns 21 this summer. For me, I think he succeeds with vision and patience. He made first defender miss a pretty good deal. I think he made a lot of creative choices, or made a lot of good choices out of the backfield, creative in the second level. I liked him as a pass blocker. He could be a little bit better with his hands and his technique, but I think he correctly recognized pressure and where the pressure was coming from pretty often. And I like his hands as a receiver. He naturally catches the football. I think he's the best zone runner in the class to me. And this is a draft class where it just happens. I think most of the openings for teams are on those teams that are running those zone schemes. And candidly, there's a lot of them around the league right now, right? Just based on the tree that is currently popular. So I think it's good timing for him out for everything outside of the injury. I think we're kind of in a phase where the youth is going to really matter. I think because we have so many older running backs around the league right now, it's kind of like a reset at that position, just due to age across the board. But yeah, for me, my only kind of big complaint, he's not like some elite player, but my only big complaint is I would like to see him finish runs a little bit more because he has the frame to do it. But I love his patience. I think he's a good receiver. I think he can play all 3 downs.
Okay.
Does he get a chance to play right away, Adam, though?
I think he can at least play 3rd downs early, but kind of as you led off with, this is the position that I think more than any other position is landing spot dependent, is draft capital dependent. Like, I know I've got some pretty crazy spots in my rankings, but I completely expect to strip and redo the whole thing as soon as the draft happens, because at the end of the day, they show intent with draft capital, especially at running back. And where these guys land can severely dictate, how things move. So,
and that's always going to be the case. And of course, with Jonathan Brooks with the injury, it does make it a bit more of a wild card of where we might see him be drafted. So now I want us to get Jeremy in here. Jeremy, first, give me your analysis of Jonathan Brooks, and then tell me who you think you agree with more here, Adam or Chris.
All right, I'm going to start with the agree a little bit because I can agree with both of them. I think that there's really good points on both sides of this. For me, my rankings are very fluid, kind of what Adam and Chris are talking about, and you'll hear it repetitively probably on this episode alone, where these running backs, almost like you alluded to earlier, Dan, there isn't a clear-cut one. So draft capital and landing spot is going to severely change these rankings in the ECR, in anybody who you talk to. And if they tell you that it's not, I doubt it. To be honest, I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe someone's going to be very stuck on their take clock for somebody, but I really like Jonathan Brooks. I think that Adam has a lot of good points. He's a really good kind of zone type of runner. He's very good at like a bait and switch in lanes. He's very patient. He does the little things, and his runs that are only 3 or 4 yards are more impressive than his 100-yard, 80-yard rips. He doesn't have that real high end speed, but that quickness and that lateral ability is all there. He's not really kind of an elusive guy, a little bit more of a fluid runner, a little bit taller. Like Adam said, he doesn't really get his pad level down. So I agree a lot with what Adam's saying. Like I said, he's not really my running back 1. I think I'm rank closer to Chris. So I'm going to say I'll agree with Chris just because I just don't know if he's a running back one, because there's almost too many question marks with that injury into what he does well that may not transfer. So,
okay. All right. Like I said, with Jonathan Brooks, my synopsis of him, I'm actually ranked pretty close to Chris as well. If he wasn't for the ACL injury, I would probably have him ranked where Adam has him, because I think he is probably the most complete back on paper when you watch him on the tape. But being that we don't know what his draft capital is going to be, and because of the injury, because some guys popped off, like some of the guy we're going to talk about next, I do question about whether or not he's going to be the first running back off the board. But Jeremy says Chris Wynn, and Adam, sorry, buddy, you suck. All right, going on to our next one here. We got Trey Benson we're going to talk about out of Florida State. This is one of the guys who popped during the combine, and I wasn't sure about him necessarily on tape. There were some instances where he could make the big play, and there was things definitely to like, but there was a lot of, in my opinion, inconsistency issues as far as his production overall. And Florida State, having one of the better offenses down the field, opened up some lanes that maybe wouldn't be there if he wasn't on Florida State. So we're going to dive into this. We don't have a showdown for this one because all of us are pretty much within the top 3 on Trey Benson when it comes to our ranking. So this is what I want to do. I want to go to Chase now. Chase, you are the highest because you have him at number 1. The rest of us either have him at number 2 or number 3. So why is he your number 1?
Well, like we just kind of talked about with Jonathan Brooks, just not being all that confident that Jonathan Brooks will be able to come out right away. Otherwise, I liked Jonathan Brooks a lot. But Trey Benson, he looks like an NFL caliber running back to me. I really liked what I saw from him. One of the biggest things I like about him, though, 348 touches last year, 0 fumbles. The dude takes care of the football, even though he's out there being a feature back. Now, he's not the feature back in terms of like the workhorse bell cow, 20 carry per game. In fact, I think he did 20 carries once in his entire time there at Florida State. But the dude had a 51% missed tackle rate this season. He's a good receiver. He's a capable pass blocker. He's patient when he runs. And the combination of being patient and quick and having that home run speed that's a money combination for me. I really like the idea of him being able to get out there and see the block happen and take it to the house. And I think he's more capable of that than a lot of guys in this class. He's not as physical as some of the other guys in the class. He doesn't necessarily deliver the blow when he's running. He's not a real start and stop kind of guy. He's not Barry Sanders. He's much more of a make you miss on the move kind of guy. Shifty that way, gets skinny in the hole kind of thing. But I really like overall his skill set, and the uncertainty over Jonathan Brooks was enough for me to elevate Trey Benson to number 1 in this class.
He's a guy, and Jeremy, you could tell me what you think about this one, because I've heard his name linked a lot to Dallas, which would make sense. He's a gap scheme runner, in my opinion. They need a 3-down guy. Chase, I don't disagree with you that he doesn't necessarily finish runs the way you would want him to, but he has the benefit of being one of the younger guys in the class, like a Brooks, and he also has the benefit of being 6 foot 216. So he has the size that you're looking for on top of it. And of course, he flashed in the 40 with a 4.39, which he's had some big runs, but even I didn't really expect him to run quite that quickly. And he does have some skill set coming out of the backfield. So this is a guy who has a 3-down skill set, and there's not too many of those guys in this draft. That's why he's my number 2, because I think he might get that opportunity, and we might see him be the number 1 running back drafted. So he might have the capital to back him up too. But if he lands in Dallas, all bets are off. He's clear cut the number 1. But Jeremy, what do you got on Trey?
Yeah, I'd agree. For me, my top 4 are very just kind of who lands where. So I could interchange all of my top 4. After that, I think there's a little bit of a tier break, and some of those guys are going to require a better situation. So for me, I really like Trey Benson, much to what Chase had said. I think he improved his vision drastically from 2022 to 2023. That was a big knock for me prior to this season. I think he got a little bit better, and that was just with more experience. He's kind of a fairly inexperienced running back as far as the volume and the touches go. He had an injury in Oregon before he transferred to Florida State, so he hasn't really seen a significant amount of touches, which is a plus sometimes for running backs, but also a negative because they aren't necessarily, I'll say, like groomed or really kind of used to the game speed, we'll say. So this is not necessarily the case. We saw him improve drastically as the season went on, which is almost better than him being good at it. This is showing that he's an improvable back. He can learn, he can kind of mold, which is what you want to see going to the NFL, because those are the guys who succeed. The guys who have normally been just good at what they do and they're just kind of lean on that don't always translate that well, because at the NFL level, your game changes. You're playing against faster competition, stuff like that. So I do like Benson. Like you said, Chase, he has the total package of the quickness, the quick feet, good enough vision. And he obviously has that home run speed to take it to the house at any point. We see those running backs be very viable for fantasy just because, nowadays you see 10, 15 touches if you're lucky at a running back position. I don't think he's a 3-down guy personally at the NFL level. I think he will be limited to the early down type of stuff because he does have decent hands, but he's not going to be a 3rd-down guy. He's likely going to get paired and be an early down guy. So I think that explosive speed is going to kind of give him that ability to still be a good, solid fantasy asset. So if he lands in Dallas, I think he's going to be, like you said, Dan, probably the running back 1 for me. But yeah, I think he's just an overall really solid type of guy. Good at, like Chase said, getting skinny in the hole, avoiding solid contact on his body, which also then leads to him not being as physical in appearance on film because he's trying to not necessarily take that full-on hit, which isn't always the worst thing. So.
Yeah, and the guy I didn't want to compliment this guy because he was another Florida State running back, but it just struck me the way his style is. It's Cam Akers. That's why I wanted to comping him to. Very similar style, wants to make the big play, could catch the ball, but wasn't necessarily used in that way. Bigger bodied guy. So it reminds me a lot of Cam Akers from that standpoint. And look, when Cam Akers was given the opportunity and not pissing off Sean McVay behind the scenes, he was pretty productive for fantasy football purposes. So, you never really know. We do got a showdown now, though, because on ECR at number 3 is Jalen Wright. I don't agree with this. We got somebody else on the panel who doesn't agree with this, too. But then we got some other people who have him ranked pretty darn high. So now we're going to have Adam versus Jeremy in this one, and Chris will be the one who gives his opinion and says who wins the debate. So Adam, we'll go to you first because you are the highest. I don't want to say by far, but you're the highest on him than all of us. You have him at RB2. So why is Jalen Wright so high on your list?
Well, the dude's freakish explosive. I mean, you can tell from his combine, his relative athletic score was like 4th in the class. Crazy explosive in the sense that around 25% of his runs were over 10 yards. He just got sprinter speed. Like the dude's crazy explosive. I love that. But he combines it with some technique while his running, especially in the interior, can cause him issues. Where I think he really shines is I think he is debatably the best 3rd-down back in this class. There's one other guy who I like and I think is comparable, but I think as a runner, Jalen Wright beats that other guy by quite a large margin. He's not got the best vision on the interior, kind of like I mentioned, but he's solid and can use pace. He can kind of get the job done. He's not physical. But what I really love and what, again, I think there's more of in the league right now, just based on how things are, is that once he can either, take a run to the outside that maybe he shouldn't, or, actually have a designed run to the outside, which, again, I think there's a little bit more of these days. He's deadly. I think his creativity in the second level is great. I think his explosiveness, both acceleration, agility, great. Long end speed, great. Again, I think as long as he can find a team, and again, this is like the whole thing, find a team that's not going to keep shoving him up the middle, I think he's going to be in a really good spot. I love, you kind of mentioned it, there's not a lot of great 3rd-down backs in this class, and that's a great way towards fantasy production, and it's a great way towards getting on the field early. I also think where he doesn't get enough credit is as a pass blocker. I think he's pretty good. He's not great. Doesn't have the frame to be like one of the best pass blockers in the league, but he does a good enough job that you can trust him on 3rd downs and not be like, oh, it's him again. He's going to run a route because he can't block. He can do both. You can trust him with your quarterback. So that's kind of my perspective. My rankings pre-draft are very heavily based on are you going to be the third down guy or are you going to get in the end zone? Like, to me, that's all that really matters. When we're this early in the process, I don't really care about the first 2 downs unless it's in the red zone that much at this point.
That's fair. That's fair because of the split. So Jeremy, now you have him at RB7. So you're, I would say that's a whole other tier than where Adam's got him at. So what is it about Jalen Wright that's bothering you?
So I'll lead off with the theory that he's going to be a third down back. I disagree. One major reason is that he has a 0.66 yards per route run in his career at the collegiate level. So that puts him at 94th amongst 177 players in the last 4 years. This is a territory that is Hassan Haskins, Josh Kelly, Dendrick Pierce, Jordan Mason, James Robinson, Abram Smith, Isaiah Pacheco, Zamir White. So you're talking about a guy that really is in a prolific passing offense that only has 34 targets for his career, only produced 171 yards. So I don't necessarily think that he's going to step in and be this elite type of third down player. His size doesn't even lend to that. I mean, he is a decent pass blocker. I will give you that. He could definitely kind of push guys past him. But to me, he feels like Israel Abanikanda all over again. He's a straight line speed type of guy. He is a freak athlete, totally is. I mean, he's made multiple freak lists out there as far as different stuff like that goes. His missed tackles forced 0.269 is also not overly stellar when you compare him to previous classes. He's right near. Let's see. I think it was Zach Evans. Yeah, he's right near Zach Evans, Jerome Ford, Pierre Strong, Kylan Hill. Not really any names that are really standing out to us as fantasy assets long-term here. And I almost expect him to be better in that Tennessee offense. You watch a lot of the Tennessee games, that spread offense opens up the middle of the box. And he was productive. I'll give him that. But you also saw his only real run against the Georgia team, which is pretty much an NFL caliber team, was the first play of the game. That was basically 75 yards. And then after that, he struggled mightily. His vision's going to really hinder him a lot, I think, at the NFL level. And that's kind of what Israel Abanikanda was dealing with somewhatly. So I just see him being an effective guy at the NFL level potentially, but I think there's a lot of development that still needs to happen for Jalen Wright. I do think that he's a really good athlete. He's a guy that I would definitely bank on in the second or third round of a rookie draft, in a good landing spot. I just don't think the NFL is going to draft him as high as we think he's going to get drafted. I think if he's lucky, he's a late day 3 guy or day 2 guy. Maybe it'd change my mind if he lands in a really good spot, but I just think that, like you said, he's really a tier below my top 4 for me. So,
all right. So
I see too many red flags personally.
No, that makes sense. Jeremy says he's nothing but an Olympic sprinter, and that's all, Adam. So take that. Chris, what do you make of this debate between these two, and what's your take on Jalen Wright?
Yeah, so if my off-turn bias is I'm more questioning Jeremy. I have him 6th on my board. But I agree with a lot of things that Adam's bringing up, and Jeremy's bringing up. Look, this guy's definitely explosive. He had 4 touchdown runs over 25 yards last year. Unfortunately, top of the red zone, Adam, and that's where he was never used. I don't think he scored any red zone touchdowns, maybe possibly his entire career. He only scored 4 touchdowns, by the way, the entire season. So why is explosive? He wasn't involved in between the 20s after that. As Jeremy kind of alluded to, big run against Georgia, then kind of disappears. You have a guy that I am wondering though, is a draft capital how high it's going to go, Dan? Because the David Achane, kind of success quote last year, you're going to see a lot of people try to emulate the system, emulate that idea of the speed back, or Raheem Mostert is a fast guy who can get the corner. You got a similar kind of build, similar kind of player. So I do wonder if this guy gets a chance. Why I have him so low on my board, though, Adam, is look, he's pigeonholed right off the bat as a tandem running back. He's never going to be the RB1. His upside could be Tony Pollard. Even that, Tony Pollard, we saw got his 1 year of shine, and that was about all he's allowed to have. So I think that's where that's why I can't have him as high as you do. So I'm going to go with Jeremy. Plus, Jeremy's the guest. Guests always win on this show.
That is correct. Adam.
I like the deck stacked in my favor.
We think we're going to have you on the show and then lose? Absolutely not. What kind of host would we be? Sorry, Adam. That's loss number 2 for you. Don't worry. I'm not keeping track at all. All right. So our next one up. everyone's going to get involved on this player. Again, I'll be the one who decides. But we got teams on this because we got one Blake Corum to talk about out of Michigan. Guy was highly productive, but a little bit on the smaller side, which has made him a controversial figure in fantasy and I think in NFL draft as far as where the hell he's actually gonna go. So let's start on the side. We have Jeremy and Chris, who both have him ranked as our RB3s. And then we go to Adam and Chase, who are going to be on the other side of this thing. Chase has got him ranked as an RB8, and Adam doesn't even have him on his list. He's got him booted down to RB13. He said, midget be damned. All right, so we're going to
He's a height elitist. Height elitist.
As a 5'5" guy, come on now.
You're hating on yourself.
What are you doing, Chase? Why are you hating on yourself?
You guys get to talk about that first. I get to talk about.
No,
why
go
I'm
ahead.
hating on
That
myself
was,
later.
Chris, that was a good segue. Let's have Chase and Adam kick this thing off. So why do you guys not on the Blake Corum train? We'll start with Chase.
All right. Well, yeah. First off, yeah, I'm worried about his size at the NFL level. I mean, I've seen some comparisons to Doug Martin, muscle hamster, and listen, as a small guy who played football, I get it. And I will say this: Blake Corum is a lot of fun to watch. He's a lot of fun to watch play football. He's a competitive runner. He doesn't go down easy, but I wish he had the size / overall ability, physical ability to complement that competitive nature he's got. He's powerful for his size, but again, it comes up for his size. He's quicker than he is fast. Kind of, I mean, he's good in the short term. He doesn't necessarily have that blazing breakaway speed there. He's not a third down back in any way, shape, or form. I mean, he played in an offense that A, doesn't pass the ball barely ever, but B, when they did, they didn't necessarily use him at all. He did have that knee injury. He has that knee injury that in his file right now that might give some people some pause, but I worry about his skill set for the NFL based on that size and based on what he does. Like I said, not a skilled receiver. He's not an effective pass blocker either. So that takes him off the field on third down. He's got really good vision. He's correctly decisive. When he makes a decision, he'll take what's given to him. He runs really hard. I just worry about, I've seen him comped to Khalil Herbert. I've seen him comped to Kenneth Walker. Neither one of those necessarily, excites me if he becomes either one of those guys necessarily in the NFL. I saw someone else make a comment that they would like to see him paired up as part of a stable with a big goal line back type guy. Well, we just talked about he's not going to be a third down back. He's never going to be on the field on third down. And if he's not going to be on the field on the goal line, what does that leave us? It leaves us a bunch of meaningless first and second down runs between the 20s. And I'm worried about that. Now, if he goes to the right spot, if he goes to, play with his old coach in Los Angeles where they have an opening in their backfield, if he goes to Dallas, now he might have a lot more value to me, but we'll find that all out a week from tomorrow or 3 weeks from tomorrow rather than what we know right now. Based on what I see of his size, his skill set now, I'm lower on him than consensus.
Okay. Adam, you want to add anything to your partner's argument there?
A lot of the same points. Look, I think his vision on the inside runs is fantastic. But I think he loses that a little bit when he gets to the second level. He doesn't always know what to do. I think when he gets that far, I think he's great for 5 yards, not great for anything past that. I think he's one of the better inside runners in this class. But I agree with Chase that I do think he's a 2-down guy. And I have real concerns. Look, he will turn 24 during this season. He got more college carries than Derrick Henry at 5'7", 205. He's had an injury already. Like that to me is concerning. And I'm even more concerned that I think his greatest strength is finding those small holes up near the goal line, up on, third and short in these situations on the inside, finding small holes. I don't know that I think an NFL offensive coordinator, or very many of them, I know some would, and I think Harbaugh is one of them, kind of to your point, but I don't know many offensive coordinators that are going to actually let him play on the goal line. And that's the thing that he's good at. I think, and I have it in my notes, he's probably the most landing spot dependent back to me, because if I see a team that has a high intention of using him at the things he's good at, then by all means, I think he's a really good back. Like, I think he's talented. I think he's got good vision. And I think he's a good runner. But he's not going to make these plays on his own. He beats people through attrition. He beats people not quite through power, but he needs the volume. And if he's not going to get the volume, then like he's not one of these guys that can be super effective like DeAndre Swift on like 10 carries. Like he's not that. I don't know that he's going to get a workhorse role with almost 700 college carries at 205 pounds, turning 24 years old this year.
Adam said, if I'm the play caller, get your midget butt on the bench when we get inside the 5-yard line. That's what he just said.
I wouldn't, but I don't trust coaches to disagree with me.
All right, so we have Jeremy and Chris. They need to make their case for why Blake Corum's our RB3 heading into this thing. Jeremy, come on, man, kick this off. Who defend him?
Yeah, so I mean, with Blake Corum, I think that landing spot dependent isn't anything to disagree with. I think, like we said, it's going to be with every running back.
Take a shot every time we say that in today's show. I just had to put that out there. Go ahead.
But 5'8", yes. But he's very stout. I mean, he's a workout freak. This guy is thick for 5'8". He's not my thick 5'8". He's much more 5'8" thick. So I don't necessarily disagree with the potentially being pigeonholed as a 2-down guy, but the age doesn't really worry. So despite us prompting that obviously dynasty age does matter, it doesn't really matter with running backs. Okay, if I can draft this guy and he's going to give me till he's 26 or 27, which is 2 or 3 years, that's what you're getting out of a running back anyways. At that point, they got to give him a second contract, and the NFL's making it proven a point that they ain't paying him. So necessarily, I think his age is being overblown a little bit. I think that his vision, his quickness is very unique. It's not something that we always see. He is kind of almost futuristic with it. He kind of really anticipates stuff and can kind of make guys look really silly inside the hole. And like you said, Adam, really good at finding those little kind of holes in the line, which makes him a really good interior runner, very similar to what Devon Achane was at Texas A&M. So yes, the size is concerning. Does he have Achane speed? No. But he's quicker than Achane, I think, laterally. I think he can make guys miss a little bit better. I think he's also very good. He's thicker. He's stronger than Achane. He's going to be able to kind of take some of those hits on the inside a little better. He's also going to be able to push guys back a little bit more. He's not by any means going to line up on a, 250-pound linebacker and push him backwards by any means, but he can hit some of these smaller linebackers, which the league's kind of going to. If you're really watching defenses, they're getting smaller and faster because the offenses are getting smaller and faster. So size is starting to become less of a concern, even at the running back position. Obviously, if you still have that old school offensive coordinator that says, I'm not giving this guy the ball in the red zone because he's not 6 foot tall, yeah, we're going to have a problem. But I think a lot of them are past that at this point. And because of what he's good at, I think they'll still give him the ball. So I really think that his ability to kind of get the short yardage area will get him on the field, even on third downs, because still teams do sometimes run the ball on third down. So his ability to get those 3-4 yards consistently will get him on the field. And I really anticipate him to land with the Chargers. I really do. I think that everything the Chargers have done have proven that they're going to feed the football to the runners. Obviously, they have Gus Edwards, rumors they might be bringing Dobbins in, but none of those guys would scare me away from Blake Corum if Harbaugh decides to draft him and bring him in. So I still think I'm in on Corum. Obviously, if he lands in a spot where he's really kind of maybe going to be a 40-60 guy and be the 40 side of it, yeah, he'll probably fall. But again, really fluid here with these running back rankings. So I think no matter what, he's earned the right to be a top 7 running back. I just don't see him being any worse than that in this class. He's just too good.
Yeah, and shout out to Fantasy Football Mad Science Lab, who commented exactly what Jeremy said about him landing in Michigan. Chris, you want to help your partner out there before I come to the decision?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things I just want to point out. Number one, we saw a running back on the Rams do pretty good. I think his name is Kyron Williams. How tall is he, Dan? And how much does Kyron Williams weigh? And how many systems do we see through the NFL run those Rams or 49er systems? We saw Devin Singletary, not Dameon Pierce, be more effective in that offensive line. I think the size actually helps this running back class in a lot of ways because a lot of these running backs who are shorter and smaller don't need as big a hole because lines can't block for shit right now. And we see that all over the league. So if you can make something happen, as Adam alluded to, and have good vision, especially in an interior, you're going to get those 3, 4, 5 yards consistently, as Jeremy alluded to, which gets you on the field, makes you a coach's darling, makes you a guy that they want to coach up for. I don't think he has to go to the Chargers. I don't think that's where people kind of link that as where he's going to go or success level will be. I think Blake Corum's a guy that showed you when healthy can be a Ray Rice player. That's who I had compared to until his injuries past year. I don't think he quite got his burst back throughout the season, but I expected a whole other year of past the injury. We might see the Blake Corum we saw the previous year, where I saw a lot like Ray Rice. Like I said, a guy who's very decisive, a guy who has initially showed you he can play all 3 downs, but I think he has the talent and skill set to do so, has the good hips, he can run the option out of the backfield. I think Blake Corum is going to be a guy that's going to work hard, be on the field a lot, and as a result can be in that coach's good graces. The more you are on that, the more opportunities you get. I mean, Boston Scott got brought in goal line situations. The size is always
Yeah.
So a lot of good points on both sides. And Chris, I think you hit the point that I was looking for the most, which was Blake Corum was not 100% healthy last year coming off the knee injury. And yet not only was he able to play through the entirety of the season, he was still productive. Not as explosive, but now he'll be 2 years removed. It stands to reason we might see a more explosive Blake Corum than we saw in 2023, which is ultimately why I have him as my RB3. So, yeah, just to get that out the way. Chris, Jeremy, you guys win. And Adam, wrong one. Adam, you're bringing Chase down with you. Sorry, bud. But anyway.
Come on, man. Pick it up.
Yeah, look, Blake Corum, we talk about this throughout the show. We're going to be talking about this during the NFL draft process. By the way, live and in Charlotte, make sure you come check us out and watch us on the stream. We'll be live on YouTube and everything like that. But when we talk about these running backs, we're going to be laying out the fact that we have so many question marks about all of them because as we've laid out, we don't have a top consensus, really 3 out of anybody, not just us on this panel, but anybody around the industry. So I want the running back who's the best instinctive running back, who shows the best vision, who makes nothing into something on a consistent basis. Now, what I comped him to, running style-wise, was Austin Ekeler. Austin Ekeler's been one of the best goal line backs we've seen over the past few years. So it's not a smaller back has proven that if they have the vision and the ability to get through the tackles and squeeze through the small holes, they can make it happen when they have that ability to do so. I was not a fan, let's say, of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, smaller back, because he didn't squeeze through those tiny holes. He didn't have that kind of vision on top of not being able to move the pile. But when you have that skill set, as a Blake Corum does, you're always going to be effective. I don't think it really matters what level he's on or what team he's on, Chris, kind of to your point. I don't think it necessarily has to be a Chargers or bust situation for Blake Corum. It just has to be a situation in which he's able to get on the field on early downs. I don't think personally, just to throw this out there, I don't think Corum's a bad pass catching back. He's not great in pass protection, but he also has not been given the opportunity to be in that role too often with Michigan either. So I think that's an untapped area of his game rather than knowing exactly what he is. But at the end of the day, I also have him ranked at RB3, just like Jeremy and Chris. So that's why I side with them. Let's go to our next player, and that's Mr. Marshawn Lloyd. And this one, the teammates are now the enemies. So this showdown is going to be between Jeremy and Chris, and I'll be chiming in on who's going to be the winner of this one. So Jeremy's got him ranked at RB8. Chris, Marshawn Lloyd is your RB1. So you want to break it down as to why that is.
Yeah, so as you talked about for the show, this is a lot to kind of conjecture, and I'm going off of the guy that I look as the most talented all-around back in my vision I saw this past year. I know he doesn't have the touches maybe that people would like to see out of him, but I see a guy has upside. I see a guy who can be a 3-down back, a guy who does have smooth hips. He can run different option routes out of the backfield. He hasn't necessarily been the guy who can flex out and shown that, but USC's offense wasn't very creative, so I don't hold that against him per se. I think he's a guy that has a lot of different things that he can bring to the table. A guy that has a good nose for the end zone, isn't just a speed guy, isn't just one thing. Is a guy who can do a little bit of everything and is pretty good at all those little things. So for me, Marshawn Lloyd is a guy who's healthy. There's no questions about will you want to get explosiveness back. A guy was a good offense, wasn't necessarily featured in USC's offense, but a guy who every time he touched the ball made something happen and was a big play guy. So I like him a lot going forward.
Jeremy, rebuttal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't totally disagree with Chris. I think that what we saw from Marshawn Lloyd is kind of been a struggle to stay on the field a little bit. So the injuries worry me a little bit there. I really see him being a little bit of like a thicker Jalen Warren, Darrell Henderson kind of esque. I mean, a little bit faster than Darrell Henderson, obviously. But he's kind of a slasher. He's kind of a one-cut guy, really wants to get north and south, has a good burst, good speed. I think he's a good dual threat type of guy, very versatile type of running back. I just don't see a high-end ceiling from him. I don't project him to see being like a 3-down guy at the NFL level. I really think, like that, like I said, like a Jalen Warren type of role. He kind of is as a complementary, kind of like a 1B, maybe like a Ken Walker role. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's maybe your ceilings Ken Walker-ish. I just don't think he does enough in the passing game to like secure that role. I also don't think he does enough in the run game to kind of be like my goal line guy, because he's not overly bruising. Like he doesn't shy away from contact, but he's not running you over by any means. So I feel like he's a guy that doesn't know what he wants to be. Like he's good at everything, kind of a jack of all trades, Nyheim Hines, kind of guy, that mold of a runner, which isn't a bad thing to get a job in the NFL. But overly for us for fantasy, I just don't know if there's going to be a ton of fantasy success that follows. And again, maybe he lands in Dallas and he gets that type of role and it changes my opinion a little bit. But I feel like where he's going to go and where he's going to get drafted is likely in a role similar to that complementary type of 1A, 1B. Doesn't really give us a ton because I think he leans onto the in between the 20s type of guy more so than the inside the 20 when you're in a 1A, 1B where you want the touchdown scoring because he's not going to be solely the pass catcher.
Okay, interesting. So basically what I'm hearing is the biggest difference the two of you have on this one is how explosive is he really? I think that's what the biggest thing is boiling down to. And I'm going to judge on this one. When I look at Marshawn Lloyd, I see a guy who was 29th in 2023 amongst qualified running backs in 15-plus yard carries. He had 18 of them, in fact. I saw a guy who was able to, Jeremy, you pointed this out, Chris, of course, you did as well, who could do a little bit of everything. I agree in the sense of I don't think this is a guy who's going to get you 20-plus carries a game, but again, who is? The guy I have comped him to, and this probably gives it away as far as where I'm leaning, is DeAndre Swift. I do see a guy who's explosive with the ball in his hands, a one-cut runner who can make a big play happen, but maybe he's not going to be consistent play after play after play to get you 3 to 4 yards carry, let's say. It's going to be a little bit of a big play or a 1 yarder, a 2 yarder, something along those lines. But when I'm looking at this draft class, I'm trying to find some upside. And I think Marshawn Lynch's explosiveness and the fact that he's 220 to go along with his explosiveness is what gives him more of an upside compared to the rest. Chris, I'm actually in line with you. I have him also as my RB1. Jeremy's the only time I swear you're going to lose. I promise. Please don't hate us and please do come back.
You can let me lose. It's okay. I go on like other shows and they play games and I always lose. It's okay.
We had to throw ones. We didn't look like we were totally unbiased, and just not just.
I get it. You got to make it look good.
It's okay. It's okay. We just had the one. It's only the one. Don't worry. All right. So let's go into our next guy here to keep this thing moving. We got Braylon Allen. I do want to get to this one. Jeremy's going to be on the hot seat once again, facing a familiar foe. But we got Braylon Allen from Wisconsin, the big back. One of the guys I was disappointed was not able to run during the combine, because that's one of the big questions we're going to have is how athletic is he really, which I think dictates a lot of what his value could truly be. But let's get into our debate. Adam, welcome back. Long time no see. You're back in on this one. So Adam has got Braylon Allen as his RB8, which is by far the lowest of all of us. And now we get into Jeremy's RB1. So Braylon Allen, Jeremy, why is this the top guy on your list?
So for me, like I said in the beginning of the show, my top 4 is very fluid. I just think Braylon Allen honestly has the highest 3-down upside of anybody in this class personally. Do I think he's totally there at the moment? No. And this is where I'm going to kind of like rescind back on where I said age doesn't totally matter, but he is the younger one in the running back class. But I like the size. He's a big kind of powerful back. Now he doesn't always show it. He is obviously at that 6-foot plus range, so it is a little bit harder for him to win the leverage points all the time on a regular basis. But when he can, he's going to run you over. The big issue is that I feel like depending on what tape you watch, you're going to have two different opinions on Braylon Allen. Braylon Allen is a very run-specific type of guy. He is not going to be able to work in this scheme that he was in this year. You could see on his tape he was a lot slower at processing. He was a lot slower at making decisions. It was his first time in this offense that was significantly different than anything he has seen in Wisconsin. In the years prior, you saw who Braylon Allen can be if you get him the ball and get him moving north and south quickly. He is very similar in that Derrick Henry type of mold, but you can see kind of what he would potentially be, which is kind of Najee Harris-esque, where he, if he's in the wrong scheme, might be second-guessing his abilities. And he has really good hands, which a lot of people knock on him because he didn't catch passes, but it's the Jonathan Taylor, Wisconsin back type of argument you can make. I mean, you see some of these plays out there. Yes, he can make the catch and fluidly transition to a runner pretty easily. He has a couple other really good one-handed type of catches in prior seasons, not necessarily this year. The issue really for Braylon Allen for me is going to be his injuries. He's had a lot of them, and they keep piling up, so that's concerning. But I really do think that of anybody in this class, Braylon Allen has the highest upside. I don't think that he's necessarily uber fast, but he has battled injuries, so I don't know if we've ever seen how fast he can be. It's been reported that he runs in the 4.4s. I don't know if he gets there, but potentially he should be. Him not running it, I think, is a smart move because if he's not 100% healthy or hasn't trained for it, he's probably going to run a bad number. But we've seen it. Chris alluded to Kyren Williams earlier. Like, how truthful is the 40? Let's be honest. I think he moves laterally a little bit better than people give him credit for. So I just think there's a lot of untapped potential with Braylon Allen, and I really think he ends up in a situation that is better for him. If he obviously lands in, a zone scheme or buried behind someone, it might be rough. But I think he's going to get drafted in a good situation because I think NFL teams have seen what he can do in the right situation and what he offers.
All right, a lot of good points laid down there by Jeremy. Adam, it's time for you to make your stand.
Yeah, so I actually don't disagree with too much of that. And in fact, I actually have him as my best two-down runner of the class. I agree with you. His vision's fantastic, especially if you can get him downhill. He was very much so in the wrong offense this past season, and how they allowed for that to happen. Obviously, you're not going to let one running back dictate your coaching hire, but you can put him in a position to succeed, and they failed at doing that. Where I think you and I differ the most is the three-down skill set part, and it's actually not the hands. I think and this is same with Jonathan Taylor, and I love Jonathan Taylor so much. I'm a Colts fan. Did you know that? They're both awful pass blockers. That's my issue. And I get it. Wisconsin just this past season with said new scheme realized a lot of Badgers fans just learned about the forward pass, so I get that that's why. And he's got the frame to figure out pass blocking, so I'll give you the potential part of it because he could figure it out. He's willing to go through the contact. The technique's just not there, and I don't know how long it's going to be. To your point, he's young, so he could easily make it to 23, 24 years old and figure out how to pass block, but I'm not quite going to project that far out. But like I said, I think he's a great two-down back now. The age is a plus. He's kind of, I mentioned it with Corum. This is another guy who I think is very, very landing spot dependent for me personally, because look, I hear you on he would be great in the red zone for both Corum and him, but the problem for me is how many openings are there around the league for a two-down back on offenses that are actually functional enough to get to the red zone without the running back? That's kind of my problem. Like Carolina, for instance, sure, he'd start, but you're not seeing the red zone ever. There's just not enough locations for that. If he ends up in one of the locations available, I do think he's going to be really good, and I think he'd probably jump up at least 4 or 5 spots for me if he lands in the ideal location. Another thing that I just want to note, I don't think it's the biggest deal in the world. He did have 9 fumbles, including either 4 or 5 this past season, and that 2 fumble disaster against Ohio State, which he did get hurt in that game, but it was a quarter later, so I don't think that they're quite related. Maybe he got hurt in that play. I'm not 100%, or on the second one. He definitely didn't the first, but he could do better at holding on to the ball. And if you're able to become the workhorse that you definitely can become, then you'll get forgiven for those things. But if you're a part of a rotation and you're fumbling a lot, then you're suddenly not a part of that rotation anymore. So he kind of needs to be the workhorse. And if he's able to get there, then I think he's one of the few backs in this class that can. I'm just, again, not super sold on it until I see the landing spot.
All right. Well, it's only fitting that we have our Wisconsin resident be the one who gets to judge on this one. Chase, first tell us what your take is on Braylon Allen, and then which one of these guys you agree with the most.
So when I did my scoring, Braylon Allen actually, based on just numbers before I did any of my film study, and I've seen enough Braylon Allen, I didn't have to necessarily do a ton of film study, but when I did my scoring on him, he actually scored out second highest right behind Trey Benson for me. But based on my eye test, based on what I've seen, I couldn't in good faith put him above Jonathan Brooks in terms of his NFL skill set. But I really like Braylon Allen all around as his NFL skill set. Listen, I'm a little concerned, with the change in coaching staff at Wisconsin, that we may have seen the last of the great Wisconsin running backs. I know they've been a little bit of a mixed bag when they've gotten to the NFL, but they have turned out a ton of running talent, and Braylon Allen might be the last in that kind of great tradition there. Listen, his balance and his run strength are already NFL level. The kid he's still a kid. He just turned 20. He's been playing against top level grown ass men, talent in the Big Ten since he was 17 years old. This dude still is growing as a human being and as a football player in terms of, learning. I think he's got a ton left in front of him to be able to, to tap into here. His decline in his counting numbers this year are completely based on that offensive philosophy shift that happened in Wisconsin. He's got good interior vision. He finds his cutbacks in traffic there. Watch his first 2 years in Wisconsin, that kind of system. He doesn't necessarily always see the entire field. He doesn't necessarily always see what's happening way outside and to be able to bump kind of thing. But in traffic, inside, when you're talking about running between the tackles, the dude finds where the lane is. He's one of those guys that's faster than quick. Now, he did time supposedly at a 4.40 at Wisconsin's Pro Day. Again, it's a Pro Day 40. Take it with a grain of salt. I don't necessarily think he's 4.40 fast. I think he is sub 4.5, and that sub 4.5 number is a magic line for me when it comes to running backs and projections. He's got good pass block instincts, which I think Adam alluded to, that his instincts are okay pass block wise, but he does need a bunch of reps there. He needs reps to improve that. He's obviously has the potential to be a brick ass wall when he's 8'3" and weighs 473 pounds. He is like the one super heavyweight here in this running back class this year. To me, don't laugh when I say this. I'm trying not to sound like I'm trying not to tell you that JJ McCarthy is going to be, John Elway. But he's Derrick Henry light. He's very similar. I see a lot of similarities in their styles. And if you want to talk about a 2-down back, Derrick Henry is not necessarily, widely renowned for his 3rd down ability, but when you get the ball in Derrick Henry's hands on passes into the flat, he makes stuff happen. That's a good way to get him into space to begin with, so he doesn't have to work his way into space. I really like Braylon Allen and his NFL skill set. He has had some fumble issues. I worry about that. He is not super quick laterally, but he doesn't have to be. It's not his game, and it's not where he's going to go. I really think that as an NFL skill set, he already has it, and he's got a ton of room to grow. I'm very much more not trying to be a homer because I am a Badger fan, but I'm much more agree with Jeremy on this one in terms of his NFL skill set. I think he's got the potential to really be an impact player in the NFL. Again, as you can say for any dude in this draft, where is this guy going to go?
Sure. Adam, I think you're owing $1 million on this show. Okay. Oh, poor Adam. We make him the star, and then, we just crap all over him. This is how we do here. All right, yeah, so a lot of great points on Braylon Allen. I'm not going to belabor the point anymore on that one, so I just want to dive to the next guy. Jeremy and Adam, don't go anywhere. You two just don't like each other. My goodness. Oh, Bucky Irving comes in now. Jeremy's got him up at RB5, and Adam has him sitting there at RB19. I don't even know why I bothered putting up the ranking graphic. It's not even remotely close to the top 10. Adam said, no, Bucky, no. Why no Bucky, Adam?
I want to start with the positive because I want to love this guy because you can tell that he loves football and he's a high effort guy. So you're not gonna make me start with the hate stuff. It seems like he is like awesome. Like he is clearly putting in a lot of effort. Like, look, he's a very small guy, and he's not afraid of contact. And I really appreciate that. What I struggle with is whether or not he's an NFL athlete. He bad size, bad bench, bad vert, bad broad jump, mediocre 40, declined the shuttle. Of players that have qualified for a relative athletic score, 72.7% of multi-time Pro Bowlers since 1987 had 6 or better, 75% for single. He's at 2.14. Not very good. This is effectively a percentile score. So we're talking in the bottom 25% to give him a little bit of credit. The last time with someone with a athletic profile equal to or worse than his made the Pro Bowl was John Settle for the Atlanta Falcons back in 1988. Been a while. Look, I think he's a great receiver. I think he catches the ball naturally. I think he's a good route runner. But I think he's an extremely poor pass blocker. And admittedly, that's a small sample because he's so small that Oregon decided to very seldom use there. But it's normally just a shoulder check and get out the way type of situation. I never saw any good technique. And while I'm willing to give Braylon Allen a little bit of the benefit of the doubt there because of the frame, I don't think he's going to develop into a good pass blocker. So sure, he can catch the ball. He can run routes. Maybe if we transition to slot, there's something, but I don't know if you can trust him to play third downs if you can't pass block. I also don't see an extra gear with him. I see some lateral quickness. You're not running away from guys. I don't have the stride, I guess, at least in my opinion. You can get to the second level, but you're not really getting past it, at least not that I saw that often. He can break arm tackles at the Pac-12 collegiate level, but I'm doubting it at the NFL level. Again, I think he's a high effort, high motor player, so maybe there's a shot in that category. But for me, I comped him to Raheem Blackshear. I think he's a guy that can catch the ball out of the backfield really well, but you're not actually going to get trusted to play third downs. Ultimately, I think you're probably looking at special teams punt return.
Okay. Adam hates Bucky Irving so much, he almost went back 40 years in research just to pull that name out of
Tom
that.
Settle on your ass, guys.
That's fantastic. Kudos to you for that one, Adam. I'll give you kudos for that one. All right, Jeremy, now it's up to you. You got him at RB5, so you're way up there. You have him just outside that elusive top 40 you've been talking about. So what is it about Bucky Irving that you like?
I'll say this. I don't know if it's as much as I like Bucky Irving, or it's just that I just don't believe that there's anybody in this running back class that's worth fantasy value.
The lesser of all evils.
I just think that honestly, I think it was Daniel Jeremiah at the Combine. Really, he just seems like Devin Singletary all over again. He mentioned that comp, and it really just stuck with me. I had like a high end, he's Ken Walker. Low end, he's like Eric Gray. Like, he is kind of not super exciting athletically. Like, the numbers aren't there, like Adam had said. And this kind of sounds like I'm not actually arguing for him, so I don't know what I'm doing here, but ad-libbing. But I agree a ton with what I'm saying. Like, there's a ferocity to his game. He does not ever give up. I think he's pretty good to above average at his like lateral quickness and ability to kind of like see things as they're coming and react and work inside and navigate through the box pretty well. Now that is the Pac-12, like Adam said, maybe, he gets into a tougher, stiffer, bigger competition. Maybe it's going to struggle a little bit. I think he does have above average contact balance. I think he can kind of bounce off of guys pretty well. He's really good at kind of limiting solid contact on his frame, which is always a plus too for these smaller type of runners. I just really think that he's going to be fairly productive and kind of worked in as like a 1B situation, much like Devin Singletary was for so long. And I think he can be that low end running back 2, possibly high end running back 3, which isn't overly coveted at the fantasy level, but is viable in the right situation. Maybe he's a little bit more valuable if he becomes more involved in the passing game. Maybe he becomes Tony Pollard, and I mean, that's definitely an option, or maybe he becomes Austin Eckler paired with Melvin Gordon. You know what I mean? Like, there's that option for him. I mean, he doesn't have the runaway speed that you would love for that player, but necessarily doesn't always need that. We've seen it plenty times and times again where players who don't have that super, super long speed still are viable fantasy options. And I think that's his path. So really, depending on a landing spot, I think that I probably am ranked probably at his ceiling, which is 5 in this class. But again, if he drops all the way to day 4 and the NFL doesn't agree with me that there's some upside here, he'll fall for me. I'm not going to sit here and argue with Adam when he goes day 4 and, we'll say just Braylon Allen for a name goes day 2. Like, I'm not going to argue that point. I'm not going to try to be like, no, Bucky Irving's better because it's a better landing spot. Like, I'm just going to put him where I think it seems right. I'm not going to fight anybody on it.
Adam, that was Jeremy speak for. I feel bad for you so far in today's show. No, I'm just kidding.
That was Jeremy conceding. He was defeated and just rolled with it.
Well, Chris is actually the one who gets to decide on this one and give his thoughts on Bucky Irving. So go ahead, Chris.
Well, first of all, you guys really hate Kenneth Walker. Wow, everybody's just blasting no Kenneth Walker. I don't hate Kenneth Walker, but
that
I
was
think he also could be
a comp, Chris. It was the ceiling.
No, I know
because he's good.
I think Devin Singletary is a great one. I see Khalil Herbert personally. I think that's a guy that you're going to see rotated in the back, a guy who does, Adam alluded to, isn't necessarily have a clear-cut role where he's going to be the red zone guy or this role, a third down guy, but a guy who could do a little bit of everything. And you see those guys somehow, some way, annoyingly find their way on the field consistently, especially in these Shanahan, Rams, McVay offenses. That little scat back running back gets an opportunity to play. He gets part of that rotation, as Jeremy talked about. And to me, that's a middle of the pack kind of guy. That's the guy that you want to have on your fantasy team, not necessarily an RB1, RB2 option, but a nice flex option, which is middle of the pack. I think this is a guy that's definitely in the middle of the pack. Of course, as we'll keep talking about, depending on where he goes. But I think Bucky Irving has impressed a lot of people with the way he kind of sees holes. He's a create what is there. He isn't going to break 90 yarders. He's not going to necessarily run over you. But he's going to be a guy who does scrappy things. He's going to be a guy who gets what's blocked and a little bit more. And we talked about those kind of guys. A lot of times those guys start seeing themselves more and more in the field, especially in those split back running back situations. So I think he's a mid-tier guy. So I'm going to go with Jeremy. As I talked about, even Dan's the host, so he can kind of get away with not going with our guest, but the guest always has to win.
Well, and now we just have a vendetta against Adam. I mean, really, let's just call it what it is. All right. Well, guess what? We have more players to talk about, so let's dive into it. Ray Davis up next. So for this one, Ray Davis coming in. He was a sleeper pick for a lot of people coming into this draft. Maybe cooled off a little bit as of late, but it's going to be me and Chase going in on this one. And Jeremy will decide who gets to win this. So Chase, why don't you go ahead and tell me why you have Ray Davis down at RB12 while I got him at number 6.
Okay, I'm gonna preface this by saying that Ray Davis, the dude, the human being, I am rooting for and cheering for this entire season. If you guys haven't looked in, if everybody out there watching,
you hate him, it's okay.
Was it
all small guys just like you?
No, listen. If you haven't looked into Ray Davis's past, if you haven't seen his life story,
oh yeah,
phenomenal dude, and impossible not to root for him and hope that he's successful. That being said, I have to base this on his fantasy viability. And since we're talking about rookie drafts, I'm talking about dynasty fantasy. This is my fantasy evaluation of him. Now, he's not an elite athlete in any way, shape, or form here. He's not overly fast. He's not overly quick. He's just kind of meh as an overall athlete. The kid works hard. He's strong. But in terms of his explosiveness, in terms of his top end speed, he's not special. He's not a special athlete that way. I spent a long time, ragging on Blake Corum for being small. Ray Davis is not a ton bigger than him. So he's not anything special physically that way. He's a better pass catcher than he is a pass blocker. He does have a 3-down skill set. I will say that in my opinion, he's a 3-down skill set. But he's a better pass catcher than he is a pass blocker. The dude went to Temple. He went to Vanderbilt before transferring to Kentucky. So I think he's intelligent. He's got good balance. I think he's got decent decision making. He's not overly shifty. His vision is kind of lacking overall at times. He's got good ball security, but there's just nothing all that special about him. And when it comes down to it, he's almost my age. So we've spent a lot of time talking about guys and age and how age may or may not matter, depending on which of us you talk to or which guy we're talking about. The age does or doesn't matter. Whereas I think Braylon Allen has some room to grow into things. I think that Jonathan Brooks is young enough. He can grow into some of the things he doesn't do well. Ray Davis, like I said, is 24 and a half years old. He's going to be 25 here during this season here, which is old for a rookie running back, especially at the running back, position. When I'm evaluating these guys, I'm looking at right now at this point, without knowing where they're going and without knowing their situation, I'm looking at their dynasty viability. He's already old for a running back, for a rookie running back. Depending on where he goes, he may or may not get a chance to even contribute right away. I like his skill set. I'm rooting for the human being, and I think he's a good overall football player. I think Ray Davis will be a fine football player on somebody's roster in the NFL. But when I'm looking at his fantasy viability, he may be more dependent on his landing area than anybody else in this class. If he goes to Dallas, hell, he might have top 20 redraft value this season because of his skill set. But if he doesn't go there, if he doesn't go somewhere like that, where he has a chance to contribute right away, where he is going to be a clear cut, more often than not, 3-type down back on the field, is he ever going to get a chance to be that guy full time? And when I'm looking at drafting guys in my rookie drafts on my dynasty team, I don't want to have to take a chance on a guy who I think is going to be a fine football player in the grand scheme of life and may have a decent NFL career, but is never going to get the opportunity to be that guy in the front of the line. That's the primary reason I have him ranked so low. I don't mind his overall skill set, but he's just not an exciting overall athlete, and his age, all of that brings me, back and gives me pause on him. Plus, I'm not necessarily so sure that we've seen a ton of him against top level talent in his college career. That's why I'm so low on Ray Davis. Again, phenomenal human being. I think he can have a good NFL career. I'm not sold on his dynasty and his fantasy football career.
Yeah, well, see, for me, when it comes to dynasty, I don't really care about the guy's age. It doesn't take long for running backs to be productive if they're given the situation. And again, running backs, who cares? When they get to 28, 29, 30 years old, the league's moving on for them after the second contract anyway. When you're drafting a running back, you only care about the first contract. So your age really has nothing to do with it. To me,
but
it's
if he doesn't get that, if he does not get an opportunity in that first contract, then what's the point of him in fantasy? Like I said, if he's in the right situation.
Did I let you talk? Shut up.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get to that point. That's the only drawback I have. I don't know where Ray Davis is going to get drafted because he is coming from a smaller school. Right now, the projection has him about the 4th round. If he gets 4th round draft capital, I'm actually willing to take my chances with what I see on film that he will get that opportunity. Now, the ones of being late day 3 or not at all, then yes, we're going to have a very different conversation. But I see a guy who can do a bit of everything. He can play in any scheme. He's proven that in his time. He never gets brought down on first contact, 26 yards after contact last year. He has excellent vision, especially in the tight windows, elusiveness. He makes guys miss in between the tackles with his size and runs with a decent amount of power for a guy who's 5'8", 211. And he has a second gear when he does get to the second level. Actually, more so, I think, than Blake Corum, at least more so than Blake Corum had in 2023. He had 16 carries, 15 plus yards last season. I have him compared to Darrell Henderson. He's about the same similar size, similar speed on the 40. And we saw Darrell Henderson, when he was given the opportunity, have 2 very relevant fantasy years until eventually he went away. I don't think Ray Davis is a long-term fantasy asset, but when you're drafting a guy who's not going to be in your first round rookie mock drafts anyway, he's going to be in your second, third round. You want 2 years of viability out of him. You're going to get that with his talent and his skill set as long as he's able to get drafted by the 4th or 5th round, I believe, when it comes to the NFL draft. Honestly, it's the only reason I don't have him ranked in front of Blake Corum, because I see a guy who's just as great in his vision, just as great in his elusiveness, just as much of an athlete. The difference is Blake Corum is from Michigan. All the NFL guys know his name. They don't all necessarily know Ray Davis, what I think is ultimately the difference in his draft capital. It's the only reason I have him at RB6. Otherwise, I'd have him even higher. But Jeremy, it's now your turn to give us your take on Ray Davis and who you think you win this debate.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate Ray Davis by any means. I think he's a very good, versatile type of runner. Kind of does a jack of all trades again, which is a very common theme amongst this group of running backs. I would say that I think he is very landing spot dependent. Like you said, if he gets that opportunity, there's a chance he rises in some rankings. I like Darrell Henderson. I also had him comped as like a Zach Moss. Maybe could end up being like Damian Harris. I could see him getting limited to more of a runner than a pass catcher. He's good at it, but I could just see, like, depending where he falls, he could become kind of an early down guy if he's in a certain situation. But I would say I'm probably gonna lean a little bit towards Chase's side, I think, with this one. Just because I do have him in my top 10, but he's like right at the end of it there. I just don't see a ton of fantasy viability. I really think he's going to kind of be, if he falls in, like Zach Moss, like there's nothing really there until he gets an opportunity. And will he get that opportunity? I just don't think so. I think he goes day 3. He's going to probably be, 5 or 6 is my guess for the round. And just probably in a situation that unless there's an injury or something happens to the guy ahead of him, he's not going to really get much. I could see him being a waiver wire hero. He could be Zonovan Knight at some point this year, but I don't know if he's going to be really much for us for Dynasty.
And that's my point with him, is that, like, independent of fantasy, Zach Moss has had a fine NFL career in the grand scheme of things. He's played for several years. He's played for a couple of teams that want him. Hell, he's going to be a starter most likely, it looks like, this season. NFL player, he's fine. Fantasy-wise, unless and until and when he gets those opportunities. But I think those opportunities in fantasy may be few and far between. But again, if you got anybody out there who doesn't know Ray Davis' story, look it up. He's a phenomenal talent to root for. Phenomenal guy.
Yeah, definitely a stand-up person. But we only care from fantasy standpoints. I'll take the loss today, but I'll see you guys this time next year. Okay, so let's move on to our next player. Oh, I'm still on the Rocket docket. What about that? We got Audric Estime here from Notre Dame, the big power running back, and I have him ranked, though, at RB12. Someone on our panel, Adam, we'll see if maybe he can get a win. Adam has him ranked all the way up at RB. I actually have him at RB3 for you, Adam. Even though you're on my list, you have an RB4 here. So somewhere in
real quick, Dan. Adam, what's your favorite college team?
I want you to remember that while it is Notre Dame, I had Michael Mayer below consensus. I drilled Sean Payton for drafting me in book. I have historically been pretty fair.
Audric Estime is going to be Earl Campbell.
Chris is like that moment in Gladiator where it's like you're trying to kill the guy, so you just bring out the tigers before the fight even starts. It's fantastic. It's like, wait a minute. All right, hold on, let me hit the drop. Go ahead, Adam. Defend why your homeristic pick of Audric Estime is your RB4.
Look, I think a lot of the things that were said about Braylon Allen are kind of how I feel about him. I think he, of the bigger backs, is more of the 3-down back skill set. He's a natural receiver, good hands, no drops in college. I think he's a pretty good pass blocker. He has a good feel for pressure, does not shy from contact. Could be a little bit better with his technique, but he actually has a pretty significant amount of reps. This is a pro style system that does also pass the ball and does pass the ball deep and does make sure that running back is pass protecting. So I actually think he gets undervalued for what he can do on third downs. I think where a lot of people are going to knock him is the dreadful 40, and I totally get it. But his overall athletic profile really isn't that bad, especially when you account for he put up top 10 percentile, top 10% in both broad jump and vertical jump of running backs in the combine over the last 30 years. He was a freak in both of those. So for me, what that shows is your burst, your get up is pretty high. And look, your top end speed is not great, but you were pictured at 21 miles per hour in college on a football field. So I think he's got enough long speed. Look, he's not going to outrun you from the outside. If you're putting him on an outside little zone run, it's probably not a great idea. But if he makes it to the second level, I don't think he's getting caught that often from guys who aren't so light that they're not going to tackle him anyways. Let's see what else. Age, pretty good. Only 372 college carries. So that's low tread. I think amongst the two, the tread is a little bit more important, but the age is always nice to know. You've got time to develop. Again, for me, I think a lot of guys are just overrating the 40 and underrating the rest of the combine. He's actually, like I talked about relative athletic score with Bucky Irving. His is actually pretty good. And if you then look at the pro day number where he ran for a 4.58, and look, I am immediately adding a 0.05 to any pro day number ever that I hear. So like, I'm not, acting crazy, but a 4.63 is a lot better than a 4.71. And a 4.63 is actually in line with a great handful
Notre Dame running back
quarterback. Yeah. Also, we've already seen Notre Dame running backs be successful with crap 40s.
That's all you had to say, Adam. Just nail him right there.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Look, he gets strong yards after contact. For a guy that's not athletic, as a lot of people may say, over 15% of runs were over 10 yards. I think he's good vision, and for a back his size, he's pretty creative at the second level. He switches up his pacing really well to kind of get an edge there. I think it's the Braylon Allen argument from Jeremy earlier. I just prefer him for the pass blocking and receiving end of it.
Okay. Yeah, look, I liked his tape when I was watching it. I'm gonna give you that. He runs really, really hard to one spot. And if he can blow up that one spot, he's going to get through to the second level. And that's, we've seen that time and time again when you're playing with Notre Dame and playing against some of the competition that they are playing against. That's why he's 17th in missed tackles forced. That's why he's 9th in yards after contact. And it's also why he does have the explosive runs, right? He was 7th, I think, overall in 15 plus yard carries, because he can run really hard up that middle of the field. And if he gets to that second level, it is difficult for a linebacker at the collegiate level, for a secondary player at the collegiate level, to bring a guy of his size down. And he is faster than his 40 would indicate once he gets north and south. The problem is the second he doesn't get that north and south, he ain't going anywhere. He can't turn a corner. He can't get moving until he gets 1 yard past the line of scrimmage. And that gets indicated by, the 40 time in itself as well, the 4.71. Ultimately, running that 40 for me tells me the NFL, they ain't going to draft you till late day 3, buddy. And that's really ultimately my problem, is that I don't think he's going to have the draft capital where he's going to be in a position to ever actually get going. And when my comp to you is a slower version of Jordan Howard, I know Jordan Howard got a couple of, seasons in there, but a slower version of Jordan Howard, you're a fall forward flat guy when you come to the NFL. So for me, Audric Estime, I don't think he gets the draft capital. And frankly, I just don't think he's a good enough athlete at the next level. But we bring in Jeremy here to break the tie between the two and give us his thoughts on Audric Estime.
Yeah, I mean, my ranking would definitely lead me towards Adam. I do think that I'm probably going to side with him a little bit here, just because I think that there's an upside here with Audric Estime. I don't think he's as – is he going to turn a corner like you said, Dan? No, but he does move laterally pretty good for his size, and he can make guys miss more than just necessarily running into the pile. Did he lean on that a little bit? Yes. But he has also shown some pretty quick feet and kind of made some guys miss in like a one-step type of jump cut and then get going to an extent. So I don't think he's totally limited to like this full-on bull in a china shop. Is it that his MO? Yeah, 100%. Like if he can do it, he's going to lean on it and he's going to ride it hard all day, every game. But if he's called upon, he can kind of make them miss. But I disagree. I don't know if he can be a pass catcher. Like Adam said, yes, he only had 26 career receptions, which is less than Braylon Allen. So it's not like he's really been heavily used in the passing game. I think that for me, he really seems like we're really hoping he's David Montgomery. That's what you're hoping for. And I think he's more Tyler Algier or, like you said, that slower Jordan Howard. I think he could be a really good compliment. If he lands with the Bills, wheels up, like maybe he's going to get used in the red zone and be David Montgomery for the Bills. That'd be sweet. You know what I mean? But he's not going to have a whole 3-down workload. And like you said, Dan, the 4-7 is going to be really interesting to watch because now the NFL is getting more tools. Like Adam had said, he was clocked at 21 miles an hour on field. Does the NFL take that into account? Or do they just see the 4-7 and the 40 and go, yeah, you're Dwayne McBride or you're Kyron Williams and you're going in the 5th or 6th round. And at that point, it's unlikely you ever get an opportunity. That's what's going to be interesting with Estime. I think that's where he's a polarizing guy. I see a ton of upside. Again, landing spot dependent, and he's kind of in that big second tier for me. So I'm going to go with Adam just because I have him ranked higher. I think there's more upside to him than I guess maybe Dan's giving him. But I can see Dan's point, and I'm very much in the middle of you guys there.
Okay. Adam, you got to win.
And I feel bad for Adam. I feel like he's always gone against me, and like you guys are giving me the favor, so I got to give it back to Adam. I can't let him go out with no wins here.
Take the lap, Adam. Take the lap.
What a gracious guess. What a gracious guess is. Well, Adam, don't go anywhere because our next player we have is Will Shipley. One more guy. Clemson running back. Let's get into it. Last player we're going to talk about before we close up the show. We got Adam versus Chase in this one. Chase has got Will Shipley all the way up at RB5, and Adam, well, he's got Will Shipley again, another guy off his list completely at RB17. Jeremy will decide who wins this debate. Go ahead, Chase.
All right. Well, I want to preface this again by saying that when I'm ranking these guys, I'm ranking them not based on like the football player that I think they are, but based on what I think their fantasy value is going to be. And again, that we're missing a big part of the calculus there that we're all going to find out 3 weeks from tomorrow, right? But I need to look at what I think that their NFL skill set is right now and how will that translate to the NFL. And when I look at Will Shipley, I see a guy who I feel has a very NFL capable skill set right now based on the way that the NFL uses running backs in today's day and age. Listen, it's not 3 yards in a cloud of dust anymore. We're looking for guys that can play in space. We're looking for guys that can play in the pass game. I think Will Shipley, listen, he's quicker than he is fast. I get that. And he could stand to increase his lower body strength and his power. So Will, if you're watching this, I know we have a big following among guys that are NFL draft hopefuls 3 weeks out from the process, but if you're watching this, Will, get on the hip sled, get in the weight room, do some squats, do some leg presses, because if you can increase your lower body power and strength, you're going to be just about the total package here. He's a good pass catcher. I think he's a very good pass catcher. He has an NFL relevant skill set from that standpoint. Like I said, I think he runs routes nicely. I think he plays well coming back for the ball and fighting for the ball. I think he has good ball skills as a receiver, as a running back. I think that as a runner, he sets up his tacklers and his blocks well. He's a multiple cut runner kind of thing. I think he can play that slot role. And I think that he can play that running back role, kind of like very similar to, say, an Aaron Jones type, which I think is a very NFL relevant skill set for this day and age, for this time. do I like him as a complete football player better than, say, a Ray Davis? Maybe not. I don't know. But I think that his athleticism and his skill set plays very well to be able to fit into an offense right away and to make some noise. Now, listen, he may not be used as a running back, as a feature running back right away, but I think that he can work his way out of the field in third downs. And I think that he can grow into that running back set. I'm going to throw a name out there that someone in the fantasy world might laugh at, but Austin Eckler did not break out as a pass catcher until year 3 in the league. And he was not really featured as a running back, as a carrier of the football until 2021. Now, if I was going to tell you that in the 3rd round of your rookie draft, you can possibly draft Austin Eckler or wide receiver 17 on your board, I will take the Austin Eckler comp every single day. So I really like what Will Shipley brings to the table in terms of his skill set, in terms of how he translates to an NFL offense and what he can offer. I think he's got room to grow in, and he's got the age to where he can still literally grow into an NFL body a little bit more. And I really like what he could offer if he goes to the right spot, and if he goes to the right team who is willing to use him as such. If he goes to, say, Minnesota, where he can sit for a year or two behind Aaron Jones, learn from Aaron Jones, get a little bit stronger, I would love that 2 years from now for him. I think that Will Shipley has a lot to offer as an NFL running back.
All right, Adam, why do you disagree?
So you guys got on me for potential bias with Audric Estime last go around. This is where I'm going to give you, I am biased. Not because I hate Clemson or anything like that. It's much more real than that. I drafted Will Shipley and Devi 2-3 years ago now. And what I've seen is a man who's not improved in any way, shape, or form since he got off of his high school football field. It's the same guy. The stats are the same. The abilities are the same. The skill set's the same. I don't think he's improved at all. So for him, and I think the conversation for me is really similar to Bucky Irving. I don't disagree that he's a good receiver. I think his route running is great. He has a good bit of drops though. So while route running there, I don't know that his hands are that great, that natural. I think he attacks the ball a little bit here and there. Again, he didn't meaningfully improve during his college tenure. He has 8 fumbles in college, which isn't great, especially for a 3-year player who I don't think ever broke 200 carries. If he ever did, it was by a handful. I think he has poor vision in the second level. His athleticism is great. I like that. But for me, I just haven't seen any improvement. Here's the other thing, kind of on the Bucky Irving comparison. I have them next to each other of the 20 running backs that I cared enough to grade as the bottom 2 in pass blocking. And their PFF pass blocking scores would agree with that statement on both accounts. So for me, from my perspective, you are allowed to play in the NFL on third downs if you are a good pass blocker. Your route running doesn't get you there. Your receiving doesn't get you there. Your pass blocking does. You are allowed to, and then your receiving is a bonus to take advantage of defenses. But you're not allowed to play third downs if you can't pass block, because your quarterback's going to be passing the ball. So for me, I would agree that his skill set is to go catch the ball. I don't know that he's going to get that opportunity. So then if he gets pigeonholed into being a 2-down guy because he can't pass block, I think he has poor vision at the second level. So his athleticism kind of goes out the window. And I think he has the frame to where he could improve as a pass blocker, but I already let off the spiel. I haven't seen him improve a damn thing in 3 years. So I'm biased on this one, but on the pass blocking thing, I feel pretty confident. I just don't see him as a 3-down back despite the receiving skill set, which kind of gives me pause, because if that's your calling card and you're not allowed to do it, then there's problems.
All right, Jeremy. So let's get your take and who wins this last debate. You're muted, buddy.
Don't worry about me over here. I do like Will Shipley. I can definitely agree with Adam. I do think that he really has been the same guy. He really hasn't gotten much better or necessarily worse. This year he battled some injuries. Didn't really look like his 2022 self. But I do think the NFL is going to take that pass catching a little bit heavier weight. I think he gets a better draft capital than a lot of these guys. I think he'll get an opportunity to get on the field as a playmaker a little bit more than some of the other players that I feel are more pigeonholed to early down roles, stuff like that later in the game. And when we're talking about most leagues now, it's PPR. So if he's going to be a pass catching guy, I think there's just a little bit more upside there. But he's another player, much like we mentioned with Bucky Irving. Like, I'm not going to fight anybody tooth and nail on it. I think there's an upside here for Will Shipley. I think although he's slight of frame and he doesn't necessarily push piles, he does lean on that physicality because he's not overly elusive in the open field. He's not going to make you miss by any means. So he does kind of take a little bit more contact than what you would love for a lighter framed guy. But he's tough. I think there's some upside. And I'm going to go probably to Chase's side. Sorry, Adam. But I do have him ranked a little bit closer to Chase than I do you, Adam. I think there's more upside here than what you're giving him credit for. I get that he hasn't improved, but I just think the NFL's the way they're going to use him is likely. But again, if he lands in a spot where they won't use him, like if he lands in Washington, like old Washington system where they're like, oh, you can't pass block, we're not going to put you out there, we got a situation. But you could also see him in a situation with like maybe a McVay or a Shanahan or somebody who's going to kind of be like, okay, let's get you in the slot and get you some passing receptions and go from there. A little bit more creative with their running backs. I could see a little bit of hope there for him.
Only one win for you, Adam, but it's okay. You got one. You got one. You ride your head on that, and it was against me, so you deserved it. real quick, Chris, because we haven't been able to get to you with much. Give me the one guy that you were going to talk about that we didn't get to talk about. Your one sleeper.
So I'll go with Tyron Tracy from Purdue, a guy who's getting a lot of pub after his 40 when he kind of did the combine. A guy who just recently converted to the position at running back, which shows you a lot of things that you'd like. Does have good vision, surprisingly, for a guy who just recently converted to the position, but also brings that alluring pass catching potential, or keep alluding to. That, by the way, I think Will Shipley definitely has, career high 240 yards is the receiving high. So I think it's a lot of hype we heard about for one guy versus a guy who we see their eyes can make people miss, has a route they can, a role, that has very projectable in the NFL. And with the hype that's kind of built around him, you might have a team take the draft capital and spend it on him. And we know those kind of guys usually have opportunity, be like a James Cook, be a guy they can kind of be rotated in early, maybe a guy who can, once down the road, maybe take over that backfield.
All right. I like that one a lot too. And thank you, Jeremy, so much for coming on the show. It was definitely an exciting thing. We broke down a lot of running backs here that are probably just going to get thrown out the window when it's actually it should be good.
Different now.
You might not be wrong.
I'm going to conform later.
Jeremy, again, thank you for coming on. Give me what you're working on right now. And then also let's tell the people where to follow you at.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned it earlier, the FTN Dynasty podcast. I try to get an episode or two out on a weekly basis. Most of my articles, all my articles are over at ftnfantasy.com. I've got scouting reports out there. That's basically what I'm mostly working on. Some Dynasty articles here and there, and then obviously top 75, one quarterback, and Superflex rankings as we head towards the NFL draft. So just kind of diving through all the Dynasty rookie stuff right now. As far as they can find me, written stuff, FTN Fantasy, and then my Twitter is @PopesFFH. And thanks for having me on. I do appreciate it.
Thanks for being here. Thank you.
Thanks for the win.
You're welcome, Adam. I'll come back on and give you as many as you need.
I'm cool with it.
Dan. Yep, Dan. Dan's having.
Chase, where can we find you at, Chase?
You can find me at STT Chase FFB on the Twitter machine, X machine, whatever the hell you want to call it here. You can find my takes on all of these guys and on more. Next week, we're going to be talking about wide receivers, so be sure you join us back here. Although next week, you're going to find us on Thursday night. You're not going to find us on Wednesday night, so be sure that you tune in Thursday night. Dan, are you back with us here, sir?
Yeah, I'm back with us. We're also going to have Pat
Excellent.
Fitzmaurice on for that show as well. So that's going to be the big guest for that one. So make sure you guys tune in, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you download us on your favorite podcast app and hit us up on social media so we get interactive with you. You can also, I'm writing some articles now. I'm finally back at the game myself over on Fantasy Football Advice Network. You can catch my latest that I put out, the quarterback draft class, and catch up with that. So thank you, and make sure you guys always be easy over the weekend. Take care.